There exists in American political life a certain species of creature whose entire professional existence depends upon the studied perfection of moral amnesia. These are the lawyers, the fixers, the smiling faces who materialize whenever the powerful require someone to explain why up is down and why Tuesday shall henceforth be known as Thursday. Attorney General Pam Bondi has, by dint of shameless effort and spectacular servility, elevated herself to the foremost ranks of this guild. One might begin with the squalid matter of $25,000, a sum that in normal circumstances might purchase a modest automobile or perhaps a year's worth of groceries for a family of 4, but which in the peculiar moral economy of Florida politics apparently purchases the wholesale abandonment of consumer protection. In 2013, when the then Attorney General of Florida found her office fielding complaints about a certain fraudulent institution styling itself Trump University, a check materialized from the Donald J. Trump Foundation bearing precisely this figure. The timing was, as they say, exquisite. The investigation evaporated with a velocity that would impress quantum physicists. Bondi has since insisted, with the wounded indignation of the unjustly accused, that she knew nothing of the complaints, saw nothing, heard nothing, a performance of studied ignorance that would embarrass the most dedicated ostrich. She was, it seems, the only Attorney General in Florida history who failed to notice when fraud complaints arrived in her own office, and when charitable foundations began issuing what we are assured were totally coincidental campaign contributions. One shudders to think what might have happened had Trump sent 50,000. She might have forgotten her own name. The subsequent career arc of our subject reveals a talent for selective blindness that borders on the miraculous. During her confirmation hearings for the position she now disgraces, Bondi was asked the rather simple question of whether Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election. The response, a masterpiece of linguistic contortion that would make George Orwell reach for his red pen, asserted that there was a peaceful transition of power in January 2021. A peaceful transition, you see, that merely required the deployment of the National Guard, the evacuation of the United States Congress, the erection of security fencing around the Capitol, and the subsequent prosecution of more than 1,500 individuals on charges ranging from assault to sedition. But for these minor inconveniences, one supposes it was all rather tranquil. That Bondi should describe the events of January 6th as peaceful tells you everything you need to know about the epistemological universe she now inhabits. This is a woman who witnessed armed rioters beating police officers with flagpoles, the very same police officers she claims elsewhere to adore, and concluded that what she was watching constituted an orderly transfer of democratic authority. She has all the relationship with truth that a vampire has with garlic. Proximity produces an allergic reaction. The Epstein affair deserves particular attention, not because it reveals anything new about the Trump administration's relationship with transparency, but because it exposes Bondi's apparently constitutional inability to resist making promises she cannot keep. In February of this year, she announced with considerable fanfare that Jeffrey Epstein's alleged client list was sitting on my desk right now to review, a statement that sent conspiracy theorists into paroxysms of anticipation and reasonable people into paroxysms of skepticism. The skeptics, as is their wont, were vindicated. The Justice Department subsequently released a memo acknowledging that no such list exists, has ever existed, or was ever going to be released. Bondi had promised the moon and delivered a flashlight with dead batteries. The spectacle of MAGA influencers who had been invited to the White House to receive binders marked declassified, only to discover they contained documents long available to anyone with an internet connection, would be comic if it were not so pathetic. Laura Loomer, not previously known for her measured assessments, called for Bondi's resignation. Alex Jones suggested the entire affair was sickening. When one has managed to disappoint both the professionally paranoid and the chronically credulous, one has achieved a rare kind of failure. But let us turn to the matter of actual law-breaking, which is after all the nominal concern of any Attorney General. In March of this year, a federal judge issued an order to halt deportation flights carrying alleged Venezuelan gang members. The order was clear. The order was written. The order was delivered to the Justice Department while planes were still in American airspace. What did the nation's chief law enforcement officer do? She went on Fox News to announce that the administration would absolutely continue the deportations. Here was the Attorney General of the United States openly declaring that court orders are merely suggestions to be followed or ignored at executive whim. When Judge James Boasberg demanded an explanation, Bondi's department produced a filing arguing that because the judge's written order didn't explicitly repeat what he had said verbally, the administration was justified in pretending it hadn't heard him. This is the legal equivalent of a child covering his ears and shouting, a strategy that, one notes, is generally abandoned by age 6. The case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia crystallizes the moral bankruptcy of Bondi's tenure with particular clarity. Here was a man who had lived in Maryland for over a decade, who had a wife and 3 children, who worked as a sheet metal apprentice, and who possessed a 2019 court order explicitly prohibiting his deportation to El Salvador. He was nevertheless bundled onto a plane and dispatched to one of the world's most notorious prisons. When the error was acknowledged, when even the administration admitted it had violated a court order, Bondi announced that his return was up to El Salvador. She had broken the law, violated the Constitution, and separated a family, and her response was essentially to shrug and point at a foreign government. The subsequent decision to bring him back only to charge him with smuggling crimes, charges conveniently unsealed months after his wrongful deportation, represents either a remarkable coincidence or the kind of prosecutorial vindictiveness that would make a banana republic blush. One is reminded that the innocent do not generally require the full weight of federal law enforcement deployed against them after they have been wrongfully imprisoned. And then there is the matter of hate speech, which brings us to a September that Bondi would presumably prefer to forget. Following the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, our Attorney General, apparently unfamiliar with either the First Amendment or the collected writings of the man she claimed to mourn, announced that the Justice Department would absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech. She threatened to prosecute protected speech while eulogizing a man who had spent his career insisting that no such prosecution could constitutionally occur. Charlie Kirk had written not 12 months prior that hate speech does not exist legally in America and that all of it is protected by the First Amendment. The irony was apparently lost on Bondi, who managed simultaneously to betray both the Constitution she is sworn to uphold and the memory of the colleague she claimed to honor. The subsequent backpedaling, the clarifications, the qualifications, the insistence that she had really meant something else entirely would be embarrassing to anyone capable of embarrassment. One might observe a pattern in all of this. The Epstein files sitting on her desk that didn't exist, the peaceful transition of power that required riot gear, the court orders that were merely advisory, the Maryland man who wasn't really a Maryland man, the hate speech that wasn't really about hate speech. Bondi inhabits a universe where words mean whatever is most convenient at the moment they are spoken, and where the record of what was said yesterday has no bearing on what shall be claimed tomorrow. This is not garden variety political dishonesty. This is something more systematic, a complete detachment from the ordinary constraints of factual reality. Federal judges, appointed by Republicans and Democrats alike, have begun issuing opinions that read less like legal documents than cries of despair. Judge Paula Zinnis declared that the administration had destroyed the presumption that government attorneys can be trusted. Judge Amy Berman Jackson wrote that the court is left with little confidence that the defense can be trusted to tell the truth about anything. Judge Boasberg found probable cause that defendants willfully disobeyed a binding judicial decree. When the judiciary begins openly questioning whether the Department of Justice can be believed under oath, something has gone catastrophically wrong with the rule of law. What makes Bondi particularly dangerous is not her dishonesty. Washington has never suffered a shortage of liars, but her servility. She is the ideal instrument for an executive who wishes to transform the Justice Department into a personal law firm. When Trump posts on social media demanding action against his political enemies and addresses the message to Pam, she confirms under oath that yes, she was the Pam in question, and no, she sees nothing troubling about a president publicly directing his attorney general to prosecute specific individuals. She has turned the office once held by Robert Kennedy and Edward Levi into a concierge service for vendetta. The confirmation hearing revealed a woman who has mastered the art of saying nothing while appearing to speak. She would not say Trump lost the 2020 election. She would not commit to refusing politically motivated prosecutions. She would not condemn the pardoning of violent offenders. She would not, in short, commit to anything that might inconvenience her employer. Her testimony was a clinic in the use of words as instruments of concealment rather than communication. We are told that Bondi was a prosecutor for 20 years and served 2 terms as Florida's Attorney General. This is offered as evidence of qualification. One might equally note that certain physicians practiced for decades before it was discovered they were killing their patients. Longevity in office is not the same as competence, and competence is not the same as integrity. Bondi may know how courtrooms work. She appears to have forgotten why they exist. If the law is merely a tool for the powerful to wield against the inconvenient, then Pam Bondi is its most enthusiastic advocate. She is the face of a Justice Department that no longer serves justice, the voice of an administration that has declared war on the very concept of legal constraint. She is, in short, exactly what she appears to be, a loyalist who has confused obedience with duty and service with servitude. Future students of democratic decline will find in her tenure a textbook example of how institutions die, not in dramatic confrontation, but in the quiet accumulation of lies, the steady erosion of norms, and the elevation of those for whom principle is merely an obstacle to advancement. The Department of Justice carries above its entrance the words, "The United States wins its point whenever justice is done its citizens in the courts." Under Pam Bondi, the United States appears to win its point whenever the president tweets. One suspects this is not what the architects of the American experiment had in mind.